In the last video, we created the home screen of our game, and in this video, we will be creating the moving background. So the first thing that I'll do is create a new empty activity. Right click on the resources folder and create a new activity, and this will be an empty activity. The name of the activity will be game activity, and this game activity will not have a layout file by default. Now that we don't have any layout file for this activity, what are we actually going to show on the screen? Well, we will be showing a surface view. Now what's a surface view? Surface view is used when you have to change the content of the screen very quickly. So create a new Java class and name this class GameView. This class will extend surface view. Press Alt Enter and create the constructor. This class will implement the interface runnable. Press Alt Enter and implement the required method, and create an object of thread class and create a method and name this method resume. When this method is called, we will resume or start the game, and we will create one more method, and this method will be called pause. And when this method is called, we will pause our game. Now let's give the resume method its functionalities. The first thing that this method will do is initialize the thread object. And the target of this thread will be this, and we will call thread.start. Starting this thread will call the run function, and we will give the functionality to the run method after some time. Now let's give the functionality to the pause method. What will this method do is it will just stop the thread. Call thread.join, and calling this terminates the thread. Now this function throws an exception, so surround it with try catch. Create a global boolean variable. Call this isPlaying. This isPlaying will be set to true when the game resumes, and it will be set to false when the game pauses. Now give the functionality to the run method. Create a while loop inside this method, and this while loop will run until the user is playing. So while is playing, our loop will run, and inside this while loop we will call three methods. First will be the update method that we will be creating very soon, and then the draw method and sleep method. Okay, so how do we create a 2D game? Well, let's take an example. Let's suppose that we have to make a 2D car move on the device screen. So how is that done? Well, the first thing that we do is we give some initial position to that car, to that 2D car on our screen of the device, and then we draw that car on those coordinates on the screen. And after that we wait for some time, and then we update the position of the car again. So let's say we move the car on the x-axis by 5 points, and then we draw that again, and then we sleep for some time again. So this process happens repeatedly and fast enough for our eyes to assume that the car is actually moving on the screen. So what we'll be doing is we will put our images on the device's screen, we will update their position, we will draw it, and we will wait for some time, and then we will do that process again. So let's create these methods now. Private void update, and then draw, and then the sleep method. And in this sleep method we will wait for 17 milliseconds. So if you divide 1000 milliseconds, that is 1 second, by 17 milliseconds, then it returns 60. So in 1 second we will be updating the positions of our images, and we'll be drawing it on our screen 60 times. So this will give us 60 frames per second. So call thread.sleep and pass 17 here. Surround this statement with try catch because it throws an exception. Now create one more Java class and name this class background. This background class will have two integers x and y, and it will have a bitmap named background, and this bitmap will contain the background obviously. And create a constructor for this background class. This constructor will take the size of the screen on x-axis and the size of the screen on y-axis. And it will also take an object of resources which will be used to decode the bitmap from the drawable folder. Now instantiate the background bitmap that we have. Call bitmap factory.decode resource. Pass the resources object as the first parameter. And the second parameter is the resource ID, which is r.drawable.background. Now we will resize this background to fit in our entire screen. So to resize a bitmap, you call the static create scaled bitmap method of the bitmap class. And the first parameter that you pass is the bitmap, which you are going to resize. And the second parameter is the width of the image. So it's going to be the size of the screen, which is screen X, and the height will be size of the screen on the Y axis, which is screen Y. And the last parameter is for filter. We will simply pass false here. Now go back to GameView.java class and here create two objects of the background class and call them background1 and background2. We will need two instances of this background class because this will help us to make the background move. And also modify the constructor of this class. This constructor will also accept the size of the screen on x-axis and the size of the screen on y-axis. Now instantiate the objects of the background class. Pass the required parameters, screen x, screen y, and the resources. You can call getResources method. And in the same way instantiate the second object. Modify the x value of the background2 object and set it to screen X. So initially our second background will not be in the screen and it will be placed just after the screen ends on the X axis. And also go to the background.java class and initialize the X and Y variable with value 0. Now go back to GameView.java class and let's see how we can display the background on the screen. So in the update method, we will change the position of our backgrounds. So in the update method, we will change the position of our background on the x-axis by 10 pixels. We won't change the value of the y-axis because we don't want to move the background on the y-axis. So call background1.x minus equals 10 and this 10 here denotes 10 pixels and call the same for background 2. Every time this update method is called, our background will move by 10 pixels on the x-axis towards the left. And a time will come when this background will be completely off the screen. So when that happens, then we will place our background just after the screen ends in the right side. So we will check for the condition if background1.x plus background1.background and get width is lesser than 0 or not. Because when it is lesser than 0, it means that it is completely off the screen. Let's understand this condition with an example. Let's say the width of the background image is 100 pixels and currently the position of the background is at minus 150 on the x-axis. So if we add minus 150 plus 100, which will return minus 50, and minus 50 is lesser than 0, it means that our background is off the screen. And when that happens, then we will place our background just after the screen ends. So call background1.x equals screen x. We haven't created the screen x variable. We will do that now. So create two integers, call them screen x and screen y and refer them to these two screen x and screen y variables. So this dot screen x equals screen x and this dot screen y equals screen y. Do the same thing for our second background. Copy and paste and just change the name of the variable background 2, 2 and 2. Now we know the position of the background, we can draw it on the screen. So where do you actually draw it? Well, the surface view object has a canvas on which you can draw. So we will get the canvas from the surface view and we will draw our background on the canvas. The surface view class has a function which is called getHolder, and using that getHolder function we will get our canvas on which we'll be drawing our images and all those stuff. So first we will check for the condition if getHolder.getSurface is valid. This will ensure that our surface view object has been successfully initiated, and if we try accessing the canvas when the surface view has not been initiated, then we will simply get a null object. Now create an object of canvas class and call getHolder.lockCanvas. Calling this function returns the current canvas that is being displayed on the screen, and on this canvas we will draw the background 1 and background 2. And how do you draw that? Well, you call the canvas.drawBitmap function and pass the bitmap. Background1.background is our bitmap, and the second parameter is the position of the background on the x-axis, which is simply going to be background1.x, and the third parameter is the position of the background on the y-axis, so call background1.y. And the last parameter this function expects is an object of paint class, which we will be creating now. Go up and create an object of paint class and initialize this paint object in our constructor. And now go down and let's draw the second background. The process will be same. Copy this line and paste it here and just change the variable name to background2. Now we have a canvas ready to be shown on the screen. So how do we show this canvas on the screen now? Well, for that we call the function getHolder.unlockCanvas and post, and this accepts the canvas that we want to draw on the screen. So we will pass canvas. Okay, so now we have everything set up. We just need to display this surface view on our screen. So go to gameActivity.java class and here create a global object of gameView class, and inside the onCreate method instantiate this gameView object, and the first parameter it expects is the context, which is this, and second and third parameter is the screen size. So how do we get the screen size? Well, we will create an object of point class and then we will call getWindowManager.getDefaultDisplay and then getSize, and here we will pass our point object, and now this point object contains the size of the screen on x and y axis. So how do we access that? Well, we call point.x to get the size of the screen on the x-axis, and in the same way point.y. And now what we have to do is show our game view on the screen, and for that we call the method setContentView, and we will pass our game view here. Now this is not enough. We also need to implement the onPause and onResume method. So when the activity pauses, we will pause our game, and when the activity resumes, we will start or resume our game. So we will call gameView.pause to pause the game, and then we will call gameView.resume to resume the game. Before we can run and see our progress, we have a few things left. So the result that you will be getting with the current code will be different on different devices with different screen sizes. So let's see how we can make this compatible with screens of all sizes. So go to gameview.java class and here create a variable of float type and call this screen ratio x and screen ratio y. Now let's see how the compatibility is going to work. So the screen on which I developed this game is of size 1920 pixels and 1080 pixels. So now let's say I am going to test this application on a device which has screen size of 1280 pixels and 720 pixels. So if I divide 1280 by 1920, which is the number of pixels on the x-axis for both the devices, then I'll get a number which will be lesser than 1. And if I multiply that number with my constant, so here our speed of the background is 10 pixels. So if I multiply this 10 with the screen ratio x, then this 10 will be reduced to a number which will make the game compatible on the other screen, and on both the devices the background will move at the same speed. So if you are going to develop any further 2D games in Android, then what you will do is you will first make the game compatible on one screen, and then you will get the size of the screen, and using that screen size you will make it compatible to other displays. Now this is the best solution that I could think of. If you have a better solution, then please use that. Now let's calculate our screen ratio X and screen ratio Y. Screen ratio X will be 1920 pixels, which is the size of the display on my mobile device. And we will divide this number with screen X and make this 1920f, which will remove this warning. And then screen ratio Y will be equals to 1080f by screen Y. And I'll simply multiply this 10 with screen ratio X. Why are we multiplying it with screen ratio X and not with Y? Because we are moving this background on the X axis. If we were to move this background on the Y axis, then we would be multiplying it with screen ratio Y. So multiply it with screen ratio X and do the same for background 2. And also we haven't created a starting point for our game activity, so we can never access all of this code unless we start the activity. So go to main activity.java class and we will start the game when the user clicks on play. So find the play text view by its ID and set this on click listener. And when this thing is clicked, then we will start our game by calling start activity, new intent from main activity dot this to game activity dot class. Now go to the manifest file and change the orientation of this game activity to landscape and change the theme to no action bar. And then go back to game activity.java again and make this activity full screen by calling get window dot set flags, and the first parameter is window manager dot layout params flag full screen, and the second parameter is the same. Now you can run and see your progress. Our main screen is still not completely full screen. We will fix that in the next video. And you can see the background moving. So that's it for today's video. We will continue in the next. Till then, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my content.